Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava. No, just stop. When you pick up the beat, then Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa Parvadikacharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad's Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parvadikacharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai Ananda Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Narayanam Namasritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirihet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and to Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, and to Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashtaprayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatuttama Shloke Bhaktim Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 11th day of December 2019 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in Canto 4, The Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter 21, Instructions by Maharaj Prithu, text number 24. Yundaret Kadam Raja Praja Dharmeshva Shikshayam Prajanam samalam bhunkte bhagam cha swam jahati saha yaudarit karam raja prajadharmeshva shikshayam prajanam samalam bhunkte bhagam cha swam jahati saha Yaudharit karang raja Prajadharmeshva sikshayam Prajanang samalam bhunkte Bhagam cha swamjahati saha Yaudharit karang raja Prajadharmeshva shikshayam Prajanang samalam bhunkte Bhagam cha swam jahati saha. Go ahead. Yavudharit karan raja Prajadharmeshva shikshayam Prajanam samalam bhunkte Bhagam cha swam jahati saha. Yaudharit karang raja Prajadharmeshva shikshayam Prajanam samalam bhunkte Bhagam cha swam jahati saha. Yaudharit karang raja Prajadharmeshva shikshayam Prajanam samalam bhunkte Bhagam cha swam jahati saha. Try it. Yaudharit karang raja Prajadharmeshva shikshayam Prajanang samalam bhunkte Bhagam cha swam jahati saha. Yaha, anyone, king or governor, udharit, exact, karam, taxes, raja, king, praja, the citizens, dharmeshu, in executing their respective duties, ashikshayan, without teaching them how to execute their respective duties, prajanam, of the citizens, shamalam, impious, bhunkte, enjoys, bhagam, fortune, cha, also, swam, own, jahati, gives up, saha, that king. Translation. So this is Maharaj Prithu speaking to his citizens. Any king who does not teach his citizens about their respective duties in terms of varna and ashram, but who simply exacts tolls and taxes from them, is liable to suffer for the impious activities which have been performed by the citizens. In addition to such degradation, the king also loses his own fortune. Purport. A king, governor, or president should not take the opportunity to occupy his post without also discharging his duty. He must teach the people within the state how to observe the divisions of varna and ashram. If a king neglects to give such instructions and is simply satisfied with levying taxes, then those who share in the collection, namely all the government servants and the head of the state, are liable to share in the impious activities of the general masses. The laws of nature are very subtle. For example, if one eats in a place which is very sinful, he shares in the resultant reaction of the sinful activities performed there. This is in parentheses now. It is a Vedic system, therefore, for a householder to call Brahmins and Vaishnavas to eat at ceremonial performances in his house, because the Brahmins and Vaishnavas can immunize him from sinful activities. Prabhupada would also say, you often use sinful activities to mean sinful reactions, which I think is one of the meanings here. But it is not the duty of rigid Brahmins and Vaishnavas to accept invitations everywhere. There is, of course, no objection to taking part in feasts in which prasadam is distributed. Close parentheses. There are many subtle laws which are practically unknown to people in general, but the Krishna consciousness movement is very scientifically distributing all this Vedic knowledge for the benefit of the people of the world. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Salakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So this instruction calls to mind another instruction by Rishabhdev. You may remember. Guru na satsyat, swadano na satsat, pita na satsat, janani na satsat, deva na tatsa na patishta sasan, na moche jaksamaveta mrityum. There he says that there are various relationships in society between seniors and juniors, or protectors and the protected. And here he gives a kind of a list. He says one should not become a guru, spiritual master, and one should not become a husband, one should not become a father, one should not become a wife, one should not become a relative, one should not become a deva if one cannot deliver one's wards, those who you're protecting, from birth and death, give them liberation. Now, I often wondered about this, because what does that actually mean? Over the history of ISKCON now, we have over 50 years, there have been many householder couples who have had children, and especially in the early days, sent them to Gurukul or trained them at home, did their best, to impart the lessons of Srila Prabhupada and teach their kids to eat properly and live properly and wake and everything that they could. And yet these children oftentimes went their own way. They barely rejected Krishna consciousness wholesale, but they would become more independent naturally and not follow so strictly. In which case, in that life at least, they wouldn't be probably delivered from birth and death. So what can you do? In other words, if you are just like Srila Prabhupada, he's certainly a guru, and he did definitely his best, which is very good, to establish ISKCON and teach Krishna consciousness, write the books, and do everything he did to impart Krishna consciousness to thousands of disciples, and yet many of them eventually wandered off. In other words, they deviated, they gave up Krishna consciousness, either during Prabhupada's time or afterward. So what I get from that instruction from Rishabhdev is that you work to the greatest of your capacity to impart Krishna consciousness and deliver those who are your dependents and those who are hearing you from birth and death. But everyone is a free agent, right? We all have our free will. I mean, even Krishna couldn't keep us in the spiritual world if we were determined to leave. So that's the idea. Now, applied to this verse here, that's what it says. Anyone who does not teach his citizens. So you teach the citizens, but they may not, they may give up the teaching, or they may not hear. They may be so stubborn, whatever. So, but the point here, which is so critical, is that, and could it be more like pertinent to the headlines today? This is amazing the way that. Anyway, it is a tremendous responsibility to take an executive position in society. Every little family is a mini society, and so it's a responsibility of the father to impart spiritual knowledge and not just to have materialistic consciousness in the household. That is certainly true, and I would say the same thing holds. If you're in a position of responsibility in which you're guiding others This is what the Shabde verse is about, and this spirit also. Then you benefit from their advancement, but you also suffer if they commit sins. And that's if you don't teach them. In other words, you're doing as best you can to learn the principles of spiritual life and human life, civilized life, and impart it to your wards, and then you're not suffering if they deviate. After all, we're reading about King Prithu here. Now, what's the history? We just read about, remember Vena, his father, right? So Vena's father was named Anga, and he was a pious king, as far as we could tell. He tried his best to correct Vena, who was just the personification of incorrigibility. He couldn't be corrected. He had certain, I don't know if you call it genetic or karmic background. So he was just demonic from his childhood. You know, he would kill his playmates, and he would do every other thing. You know, when Anga just got up and left in the middle of the night. You know, he was the king, but he couldn't take it anymore. Just departed, took sannyas. And then what? There's no king, so all of the robbers and the thieves and the dacoits, they came out. No, now's our chance, you know. And so there was chaos in society. So the Brahmins got together. Well, we got to at least give Vena a chance, as we say, and we recently have experience. Maybe he'll grow into the position. I mean, we're practically reading right from the headlines here. We could just read the daily newspapers for the Bhagavatam class. And so he didn't grow into the position. He was incorrigible. And so he took the throne, and then the thieves and the dacoits, they were suppressed because he was very strict. But then he became the biggest dacoit, and he was, stopping the sacrifices of the Brahmins and persecuting the Vaishnavas and saying, "I'm God, worship me." So the Brahmins couldn't take it after a while, and they killed him, which is not their duty. That's meant to be done by the Kshatriyas, but Kshatriyas had been corrupted, whatever. So they killed him with mantra. And then after some time, they performed a procedure, which I won't get into, where Prithu and Archie came out, and they were considered to be his son and daughter. And they were pure, completely pure, because his sins had been siphoned off into another individual. So then Prithu is showing the nature of a perfect king. That's the whole idea here, is that his teachings and the way in which he forced the earth to produce again, this is all part of the kingly responsibility, to see the prosperity and the spiritual health, the spiritual material health of the citizens. Let's put it that way. So he's done the material side, and now he's also saying himself how to be a real responsible king. The previous verse, he said how this will benefit him if he does it. I think that upon the execution of my duties as king, I shall be able to achieve the desirable objectives described by experts in Vedic knowledge: liberation from birth and death and going back to Godhead. This destination is certainly achieved by the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the seer of all destiny. So he's completely fixed. He's a pure devotee, and he's going to do his duty as the king. And now he's saying some of the benefits, or some of the liability if you don't do that. And that is that you're liable to suffer for the impious activities which have been performed by the citizens. Now just try to conceive of what that means today. I mean, you have millions and millions and billions of people performing all kinds of pious activities. And you have these fools who are like clawing their way to the top executive position somehow, and then along the way performing all kinds of nefarious activities. And then they're up there, but the people in general are not being guided properly, and so they've paved a very dark destination for themselves. It's like the worst job in the world. They think it's, I'm on the top now, but it's the worst job in the world, because they have to take on, what is it, 1/6? I think 1/6 of the benefit, 1/6. But 1/6 of a lot is going to be a lot of suffering. So this science is unknown to obviously, subtle science of karma and taking on sinful reactions. So Prabhupada, he reiterates this in the purport. He must teach the state how to observe the divisions of varna and ashram. It's not just varna, it's also ashram. Meaning varna is how to organize society so that prosperity can take place. People are engaged according to their psychophysical nature, according to the modes they're in, right? Not just their birth. Into 4 varnas of Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras. But there's also the ashram, in which there's this progress. You're meant to make progress through brahmacharya and vanaprastha. Brahmacharya, grahastha. Most people enter grahastha. But it's an ashram. The center has to be Krishna. And therefore, the self-control is there, and do's and don'ts. And then retired life. It's not that you live in household life the whole time. And then eventually sannyas and complete renunciation. Without that, then the whole thing devolves into materialism and sin. And so, Prabhupada mentions levying taxes. One of the greatest blessings of being inside ISKCON all these years is not having paid taxes. Because what happens to the taxes you pay? It doesn't mention that here. But I mean, this was something I was aware of in the 60s, before I was a total atheist. And that is the idea that you're participating in the state, and the state is bombing people in Vietnam and Cambodia and killing, it's horrible. And the money you're giving there through your taxes, which is withheld, if you're just an ordinary worker, that's your effort. You're connected to that. And so this idea of non-cooperation, non-participation was, I was into that before I even heard about Krishna consciousness. So the taxes are, there's a whole, the demons are very expert in trying to maximize their material position. That's the whole idea. Just read the 16th chapter. So much wealth do I have today. I will kill this enemy and have so much more. Right? I am perfect, powerful, and happy. I'll perform some sacrifice. I always think of the mafia going to church on Sunday, All these Italian guys who go to church, who look religious, and then whack somebody. And that's in the Gita. That's in the Gita. I'll perform some sacrifice for name only, so I'll look religious, and then I'll continue in my nefarious ways. So it's we're seeing this all around us. Because without proper guidance, without training, without education in these things, the natural, the society devolves. Because the animal, nature comes out, the lower modes of nature. The biggest dog gets to the top of the heap, and has his own clique. And we see it all over the place now. So Prabhupada wrote these books, and he started this movement as a we used to call them countervailing force to the natural progress of Kali Yuga, which for the life of me I can't see how it's going to devolve for 427,000 years at the rate we're going now. But we can practically see it's disastrous. So what can save it? The Krishna conscious leaders, people who are actually devotees who teach and who live by example and are concerned about the material, the spiritual as well as the material welfare of the citizens. And that's what this is all about. The government servants and the government, they levy taxes, and corruption is rampant throughout the whole world. India is famous for it. You can't get anything done. I heard a lecture where Prabhupada is talking about how he got a phone. It's actually pretty funny. You remember that? So he's talking. The theme is how technology is actually a negative, So a phone, the basic phone, not a cell phone, plug-in landline. So Prabhupada said, so he's in L.A., I think he's sitting in L.A., he said, here in America, you can get a phone and they'll come the next day or that day, and you pay $40 and they install your phone, deposit. So whereas in India, it'll take years, unless you bribe, unless you pay so many thousands of rupees, Every level there's corruption, The guy who's going to plug in your phone might give me some bakshish, So But what you get is a negative, ultimately. So Prabhupada describes the phone. He says he was so happy he got the phone in one day, He said, once I got the phone, I was bothered always, So it's my disciples, my students, he's called them, my students, they found out I had a phone. So then, always I was by it, and it just ring, ring, middle of the night. They call me up, Swamiji, how are you doing? And and so he says, is it the time to call? They're calling from New York, so they're not, the time changes. And oh, I'm so sorry, So after that happened, Prabhupada said, take the phone out, take the phone. But there's two lessons there. One is that technology, as we know with these phones that are always with you. I'll tell you a story. For years, Pavamana knows, there was a Gurukul in Alatra, a ladies' women's Gurukul, girls' school, which was run by this very competent lady named Lakshmi Moni. And she had her second in command there, Akuti, who everyone knows, Dinabandhu, the Indian who's always takes devotees around and knows so many stories, very famous. Well, his wife is Akuti, and they have a daughter, I think, who grew up in Alatra. So she's always there. So they're running the school, and kids are graduating year after year. And then one year I went there, and the Gurukul had disbanded. Lakshmi Moni wasn't there anymore. She went back to Canada. She's from Canada, and she's doing something else. And eventually I saw her, maybe at the Toronto Rath Yatra, and I asked her, well, what happened to the Gurukul? Why did it go down? They said the cell phones. Where once, the parents insisted that the girls had to have cell phones, and the girls had, had it. So, okay, cell phones. So as soon as they got cell phones, then, late at night, they would get on the cell phone and be texting some of the guys from the boys' ashram, the young boys, and it was going on like that. And she couldn't stop it, And it was like a corruption of the consciousness she was trying to create there, so she had to stop the whole Gurukul. So this is, and anyone knows who's a little sane, you walk down the street, whenever I travel, I see people, my God, everybody, young, old, doesn't matter, they get their face in that cell phone. There's something on there that's urgent, for them to check out. And I remember I was sitting next to one, it was very crowded, and so I was sitting next to one lady, young girl, in her 20s. She had the cell phone going and the computer going, and she was texting here, and she's here, listen to this, and it totally plugged in, right in the middle of the airport, waiting for the plane. So this is, as I say, it won't end well. This does not. It's just another million ways you can be distracted from your actual mission in life, which is to cultivate Krishna consciousness. So, what Prabhupada is giving here in the purport is a summary of really some of the ways in which Kali Yuga is progressing and degrading, and the government heads, they levy taxes. But what happens to the taxes? Are they spent for the benefit of the people? So much of the money in this country, it goes to the military, and huge amount, $1 trillion a year when you count it all up. What happens to that money? Well, talk about corruption. You have these huge companies, that build weapons and guidance systems and a million different things. And there's no, there's all kind of kickbacks and everything. $60,000 for a coffee maker, you know what I mean? It's just, people don't know. And that's hard, their hard-earned money is going for that. And that's why, that's one of the reasons they keep these wars going for like 20 years in Afghanistan. It just came out, it's totally corrupt, they're totally lying, just like the war in Vietnam. Because it feeds the big maw of the military-industrial intelligence complex, Trillions of dollars wasted on, destroying these countries. This is from the government, misguided government, run by the demons. So what the antidote is here in the Bhagavatam. Prabhupada is talking about the need for how you eat. If you neglect such instructions as simply satisfy living toxins, then those who share in the collection, all the government servants, are liable to share in the impious activities of the general mass. Laws of nature are very subtle. This is the thing. Laws of nature are very subtle. For example, and this whole thing, if one eats in a place where people are very sinful, it shares in the resultant reaction, this means reaction, of the sinful activities performed there. So, now devotees, sometimes, you're on Sankirtan and you have to sit in a rest stop or something, So, and we should understand that those, when you're chanting Hare Krishna, especially if you're doing something, you're on a mission for preaching, then there's all kinds of things that you may be forced to do that you wouldn't ordinarily do that are not really contaminating because you're in the middle of kirtan. Just, of course, we don't eat down there, but I remember the interesting things that pop into your head. We're going back 46 years. It's 1973. We're doing Harinam in the middle of Manhattan. Now, I don't know if anyone knows Manhattan, but Broadway, it goes on an angle. And so there's these little islands, when traffic is going on either side. You've been to Manhattan. So it's Broadway and like 34th Street or something. Macy's is there, there's millions of people. It's at Christmas time and doing all this Harinam. So you got to take lunch at one point, Well, okay, we have each given, some prasadam, so I took a break, and I sat on this island, on a bench, little mini park, and I was taking my prasadam. And so, all kinds of simple activities must have been performed there, but, I got to take somewhere. So this guy comes up, and this was the time when the black Muslims were very prominent. They were just coming, and they were very militant, And so they said, this guy comes up to me. I'm just sitting there all alone, And he says, "Who is your God?" I said, "Oh boy, what's this guy up to?" And I could see that he was going to, give me a hard time. So I said, you worship Allah? I worship Krishna. It's the same God, and He's very beautiful and very kind. Isn't that so? And I started kind of glorifying Krishnaism, and he kind of softened them up. It just comes to mind, it kind of diffused the situation like that way. It is by glorifying Krishna, which is always appropriate in every condition. But that just came to me. But the idea is I had to take lunch there, and in the middle of New York, all kinds of sinful activities. But because it was necessary, we're in the middle of preaching, you don't get the reactions. But ordinarily, you should try to avoid that. Taking prasadam, and the whole idea of receiving foodstuffs from sinful people. You shouldn't eat them. If they're raw, you can prepare and offer to the Lord if someone gives you some rice or something, that's one thing. But there's all these subtle laws of how one can be infected by the modes if one is not careful. It's the duty, probably in this aside here, it's not the duty of rigid Brahmanas and Vaishyas to accept invitations everywhere. Now Prabhupada, when he was preaching, he would accept invitations here and there. And sometimes they would cook, unmentionable foodstuffs, thinking it was the best thing they had, The Prabhupada would often just take the fruit, things if you didn't know the cooking. Be very careful what you eat. Okay. Subtle laws. There are many subtle laws which are practically unknown or literally unknown to people in general. But the Krishna conscious movement is very scientifically distributing all this Vedic knowledge for the benefit of the people of the world. Now, one of the things also about Harinam, we used to have a weekly Harinam downtown, and that is that Prabhupada explained that just going, on the street and chanting like that, the auspicious vibration, even after you've gone back home in the van, there's still an effect on people in that area because there's subtle things that are going on, subtle, vibrations. And at the same time, on the other side, especially sound can have a subtle effect on your consciousness because of the modes it's in and the consciousness of the people who are producing that music or that sound, whatever it may be. So our whole science is based on the purification of the sound of the holy name. And the more purely we chant it, both individually and in public, the more powerful that effect will have on people. And often the effect is that someone becomes interested and they'll stop, to listen. Now, there are many verses, some of which I could recite, which I won't bother, saying how just
uttering once the holy name gets rid of all your sinful actions, from millions of lifetimes. Practically speaking, you're liberated. But it's like the fan is still going. You still have these tendencies to commit sin. And if you start sinning again, then you're starting the wheel rolling again for more bondage. You understand what I'm saying? But there's a verse in the 6th canon, which I can't put my finger on right now, which says, this is, I think, part of Chitraketu's prayers after he's worshipping under the Narada Muni's instruction. He has 7 days he offers these prayers, and then he realizes God. And it's all about hearing the holy name once. That hearing the holy name once just eliminates, scads and scads of sin, which is very enlivening for going down to the December night, and giving people a holy name. People were interested, they're hearing. One guy came out and said, "Will you please be quiet? They're singing so beautifully over there." I looked over, there was some kind of a little choir. I said, okay, But I was chanting at the top of my lungs, We had our little Israeli amplifier. So that people could hear the maximum, and to be aware of that when you're out there, it's enlivening. It means that you're, the conduit. You're getting the mercy of Lord Nityananda. This is what he did. There's this Nityananda Ashtaka where he approaches Lord Chaitanya and says, "Ahe bratra nirnam kalikalashanam kinda babata tata prayashchittam rachaya yadanayasita hime vajanti tvam ittam sahabhagavata mantriyati yo bhaje nityanandam bhajanatu dukkandandavadi." I worship Lord Nityananda, the root of the tree of bhakti. He approached Lord Chaitanya and said, "My dear Lord, all these people in general are being overcome by the influence of the age of Kali. Please create some means by which they can easily approach you and be purified and saved." So, of course, the means is congregational chanting. So the next verse, Lord Chaitanya is going around under the instruction of Krishna, under the instruction of Lord Chaitanya, and saying, "Yatishtam re brato kudu hadi hadi dvanamanasham." Each house he's going with his hands upraised, and he's pleading with the residents, "Please chant the holy name of Hari without ceasing, day and night. And in this way, give to me your liberation from birth and death. These are the only alms that I request, is your liberation by chanting the holy name." And so this is exactly, and if we do that, even in our own little way, however we may do it, and it includes book distribution, of course, then we get the mercy of Lord Nityananda, and we can approach Lord Chaitanya and get his mercy, and ultimately get the mercy of Radha and Krishna. That's what Srila Prabhupada is spreading, and the movement is going on. So this is the subtle laws, both material and spiritual, and once we know them and we can use them in our to advance in devotional service and take advantage of the subtle but very powerful influence of transcendental sound. So I'm going to read this translation once again. "Any king who does not teach his citizens about their respective duties in terms of varna and ashram, but who simply exacts tolls and taxes from them, is liable to suffer for the impious activities which have been performed by the citizens. In addition to such degradation, the king also loses his own fortune." So, any questions, comments? We have the mic? Hold on, he's going to give you the mic. We have an audience out there. You never know. There could be hundreds.
I kind of have to apologize. The word shamalam, what is the translation?
Shamalam is I think impurity. Impious.
Impious. Well, there's this film director or something, Shamalam.
Yeah.
I was just wondering. Was it?
Is it Shamalam? I thought it was Shamalam.
Is it Shamalam? I don't know. Shamalam. Maybe it's that. Anyway. But,
yeah,
very interesting.
That's a job for you later. Try to figure out what's going on with it.
Been going on since time immemorial. First, I have to run up to work.
Okay. Maybe make it a project. Okay, anything else? Okay. Well, since we have a minute or two, Let me give you a little poem. Can't hurt. So, meditation on Krishna who enjoys in the forest of Vrindavan. Right? Indranila manimandula varna, pullani pukasamanchta karna, Krishna labada kishora sihari, sundaro jayati kunja bihari. His smooth complexion conquers sapphires, stunning to the eye. Kadamba blooms with fragrance full on each ear gently lie. His beauty's greatened by his chest, where Gunja necklace stays. All glories to the Lord who in Vrindavan's forest plays. Shakara longing for the moon of Radha's radiant face. A thief purloining patience from the coward's wives apace. His expert rhythmic clapping, winning all the gopis' praise. All glories to the Lord who in Vrindavan's forest plays. And the next one's especially pertinent for us. When Indra's sacrifice he stopped, he stole the Deva's prize. By playfully uplifting Giri Govardhan to hide his friends and cows beneath the hill for 7 nights and days. All glories to the Lord who in Vrindavan's forest plays. Don't love the body, just a bag of flesh and blood and bone. Give up your sense of ownership for all you think you own. At every moment, see that your world totters on destruction. Become detached and learn to love the Lord without obstruction. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.